Stop. Whatever you are doing right now, stop. What I am about to say is not for everyone listening. It is for you. You have been carrying something heavy for so long that you have almost mistaken it for your personality. You keep moving, keep answering, keep showing up, but inside you feel the strain of being the one who notices first, the one who prays longer, the one who senses when something is off before anyone else sees it. And because no one around you has named it, you have learned to carry it quietly, as if silence makes it easier to bear. You have also felt the strange ache of being spiritually awake in a room that keeps acting asleep. You look at the same relationships, the same routines, the same conversations, and something in you keeps saying, this is not all there is. You do not always have language for it. You only know that your spirit has been tugged, interrupted, and pressed by a truth you cannot dismiss. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you will recognize what has been speaking to you, what the pattern really is, and why the timing of this message is not accidental. By the time we close, you are going to recognize the signs that have been circling your life and what they are actually confirming. You are going to understand the pattern that has been draining your strength in ways you could not fully explain. You are going to see the root beneath the root, the place where the weariness began, and you are going to hear a declaration spoken over you that is meant to steady you, not merely stir you. I am not speaking to the part of you that likes beautiful words. I am speaking to the part of you that has been waiting for a clear voice in the middle of the noise. You did not come here by accident. You came here because something in you has already been answering this message before you heard a single sentence. This is why it feels so personal. This is why the message lands in a place other words could not reach. You are not being entertained, you are being met. And what meets you here tonight is the quiet confirmation that heaven is not confused about your season, even if you have been. There are moments when the soul knows before the mind can explain, and this is one of those moments. Something has been happening to you. It has not been loud, and that is why other people have missed it, but you have not missed it. You have felt it in the pauses, in the restlessness, in the moments when you sit still and realize that what used to fit no longer fits. You may have noticed that certain mornings arrive with the same pressure on your chest, as if you are waking inside a season that has not yet fully lifted. You get up, you do what is required, you speak to people, you handle what needs handling, but there is a feeling that some part of you is still standing at a door that has not opened. It is not always despair. Sometimes it is simply the weight of unfinished movement. You may have noticed emotional waves that seem to come without warning. One moment you are steady, and the next moment you are flooded with a grief, a longing, or a quiet ache that does not match the conversation around you. Nothing bad has happened, yet your inner world keeps rising like water against a wall. That is not weakness, that is a signal. What has been buried does not stay buried forever. You may have noticed that old conversations no longer satisfy you. Words that once kept you comfortable now feel thin. Compliments feel thinner. Excuses feel thinner. Even certain relationships that used to hold your attention now seem to echo with a hollowness you can no longer ignore. It is as though your spirit has outgrown a room your mind is still trying to decorate. You may have noticed repeated patterns in numbers, repeated timing, repeated interruptions. You glance at the clock at the same hour again and again. A word returns, a verse returns, a name returns, the same feeling returns. These things are not random little sparks to amuse you. They are a language. They are the way your life has been tapping on the window saying, look again. Do not overlook what is being shown. And if you have been feeling more sensitive than usual, more alert than usual, more unable to pretend than usual, that sensitivity is not a flaw. It is the evidence that something in you is refusing to sleep through this season. The signs are not there to scare you. They are there to wake you, They are not problems to eliminate, they are confirmations to recognize. Take a breath with me. Let your shoulders soften just a little. You do not need to defend what you are sensing in order for it to be real. If even one of those things just landed in you, if you recognized your own life in more than one sentence, type the number 888 in the comments. The frequency of overflow is not a fantasy here. It is a sign that what has been withheld is not forgotten. Type 888, then come back to me. But there is something beneath these signs. The signs are real, but they are only the surface. They are the top layer of a much older story, and if you stop at the surface, you will keep calling the symptom by the wrong name. Beneath those signs is one single pattern. It is the pattern of carrying too much without being mirrored enough. It is the pattern of being the strong one so long that your strength has become the place where everyone else leaves their weight. It is the pattern of sensing deeply, responding faithfully, and then wondering why your own need seems to remain unanswered. This pattern is subtle because it often looks noble. It looks like responsibility. It looks like maturity. It looks like being the dependable one, the calm one, the one who does not fall apart. But underneath that appearance, something has been happening. You have been trained to believe that your value is proven by how much you can absorb without complaint. So you keep absorbing. You absorb the moods in the room. You absorb the unspoken disappointment. You absorb the waiting, the delays, the mixed signals, the unfinished promises. And because you keep carrying it, people around you start to assume that carrying it costs you nothing. This pattern shows up in your relationships when you become the place where other people unload, but rarely arrive to understand you. It shows up in your work when you keep giving more than is noticed and yet still feel unseen. It shows up in your private prayer life when you speak, but only after everyone else has spoken. It shows up in your own heart when you make room for everybody else and then wonder why your inner house feels crowded and tired. The deepest part is that this pattern does not always announce itself as pain. Sometimes it announces itself as duty. Sometimes it sounds like, I just have to keep going. Sometimes it sounds like, maybe it will feel easier if I am more patient. Sometimes it sounds like, I should not need so much. But those voices are not wisdom, they are repetition. They are the echo of a script that has been playing longer than the season you are in. And the cost of staying inside that pattern is quiet but real. It makes you over-explain what should have been understood. It makes you settle for almost. It makes you stay longer than peace allows. It makes you mistake endurance for alignment. It can even make you suspicious of the very door you have been asking for, simply because you have been disappointed so many times that you no longer know how to expect without bracing for pain. But there is a layer beneath this one, and to name that layer, I need to speak to you through an image you already know in your bones. Imagine a tree that has been growing on soil, shaped by an old shadow. At first glance, the tree looks fine. It stands, it reaches, it gives shade. But if the roots have learned to spread around a buried stone, the tree grows in a careful, bent way, not because it is weak, but because it has been adapting for a very long time. The trunk may look straight enough to strangers, yet the inner pressure tells another story. The tree has been surviving around an obstruction it never chose. That is what this has felt like. You have been growing around something old, something hidden, something planted in the soil before you ever had language to question it. Maybe no one called it by name. Maybe the people around you thought the tree was simply strong. Maybe they praised the way it kept standing through storms and never asked what shape the roots had to take in order to keep standing. But roots remember. Roots store the weather. Roots know where the stone is. Roots know where the water never reaches cleanly. And this is why certain parts of your life have felt bent in the same direction for years. You keep trying to become more open, more peaceful, more secure, more trusting, but there is an older formation underneath the surface that keeps telling the inner life where it is safe to go and where it is not. The leaves may change, the seasons may change. Yet the root system keeps speaking in the old language of caution. Some of you were taught early that being noticed came with pressure. Some of you were taught early that being useful was safer than being fully known. Some of you were taught early that your own needs complicated the peace of the room, so your soul learned to widen around the pressure and keep producing fruit anyway. The world called it resilience. Heaven saw the cost. And that cost is not merely emotional, it is spiritual. Because when a tree keeps bending around a buried obstruction, it slowly forgets what it feels like to grow without negotiating with fear. It forgets how to drink freely. It forgets how to stretch without anticipating resistance. It forgets that it was meant for more than survival. But now the roots are stirring. Now something under the soil is shifting, not because the tree has suddenly become someone else, but because the stone that shaped the bend is no longer hidden in the same way. The pressure is being exposed. The obstruction is being named. The roots that once crept around it are beginning to sense that they do not have to remain trapped in the old shape forever. Take a breath with me and let that settle. Not every bend is a destiny. Some bends are only the memory of an obstacle that can finally be addressed. If the image of that tree and those roots is settling somewhere inside you right now, if you can feel the old shape of your life in that picture, type the words "I am awake" in the comments. Let the recognition seal where it has landed. Type it, then come back to me. And now listen carefully, because the turning point is not that the tree is condemned for growing bent. The turning point is that the root can be tended. The turning point is that what was adapted can be healed. The turning point is that what was bent by survival can be brought back toward freedom. The answer is not more striving. It is return. You do not need to become another person. You need to return to the part of you that was never meant to live in constant defense. You do not need to earn a softer inner life. You need to receive one. You do not need to prove that you are worthy of peace. You need to let peace find the places in you that have been clenched for too long. Return means the inner life is no longer organized around emergency. Return means your prayers are no longer only alarms. Return means you stop calling every delay a rejection and every silence a verdict. Return means you let God be present in the place where you usually perform strength. Return means you no longer require your own heart to survive by hardening itself. There is a difference between discipline and self-abandonment. There is a difference between patience and resignation. There is a difference between humility and disappearing. You have lived too long in the blur between those things. So part of your return is learning the difference again, slowly, without shame. Return also means that you stop making decisions only from the part of you that is tired. Tiredness has opinions, fear has opinions, old pain has opinions, but they are not always true guides. The deeper part of you knows when something is calling you higher, even if the lower parts of your life are still trying to keep you safe by keeping you small. What you do not need to build is a new identity that makes suffering impressive. What you do not need to build is a spirituality that only feels real when you are under pressure. What you do not need to build is a life that continually asks you to shrink in order to keep other people comfortable. What you need is a return to wholeness, where your inner yes and your outward life begin to match. And that return is not vague. It begins in ordinary places. It begins when you stop agreeing with the lie that your exhaustion is proof of your faithfulness. It begins when you let one honest prayer replace 10 polished ones. It begins when you tell the truth to yourself without decorating it. It begins when you recognize that the burden you have normalized is still a burden, even if you have become used to carrying it. You may have thought restoration would feel dramatic. Sometimes it does not. Sometimes it feels like a small internal release, a quiet unclenching, a return of breath to a place that had forgotten how to breathe. Sometimes it feels like seeing one thing clearly enough to stop negotiating with it. Sometimes it feels like the first honest no, the first peaceful pause, the first refusal to keep translating yourself for people who have not learned your language. And once that begins, stewardship replaces strain. You stop treating your soul like a machine that must be kept running at any cost. You start tending it like the living place it is. You give it rest without guilt. You give it truth without delay. You give it boundaries without apology. You let it be a garden again, not a battlefield you have to win every day. The morning seal is this: when you wake, before the noise reaches you, place one hand on your chest and speak one clear sentence of belonging. Not performance, belonging. Do not rush past yourself. Let the first voice you hear in the morning be a voice of steadiness, not accusation. That is how the return begins to settle into the body. The frequency audit is this: when the day has scattered your attention, pause and ask what has been draining you by repetition. Is it a conversation, a fear, an obligation, a memory, a posture you keep holding to manage everyone else's comfort? Name it plainly. What is named loses some of its fog. What remains foggy tends to rule unnoticed. You are not powerless here. You are learning discernment. And as you tend what is yours, you will notice that peace is not passive. Peace is active cooperation with what is true. Peace is not denial. Peace is not pretending the root system never bent. Peace is the steady agreement that the bend is no longer the master of the tree. If something in this message confirmed what your spirit already knew, let your like be your amen without words, not as a metric, as an agreement that what was named here was named correctly. Sit with that for a moment. Let it settle into the part of you that has waited longest to hear a voice that does not rush you. There is someone in your life who needs this exact message tonight. Someone quietly tired in a way they do not admit to anyone. Someone secretly seeking but afraid to say so. Someone holding a posture nobody around them truly sees. Someone whose face just came into your mind as I was speaking. Send this to them, not as a recommendation, as a delivery, the same way it was delivered to you tonight by appointment. Before this closes, type the words "I am chosen" in the comments, not as a wish, not as a hope, as a confirmation. The agreement quietly forming between heaven and your hearing across these last minutes is one you will live from for the rest of this season. Type it slowly. Let your fingers do what your spirit is already doing. You are not overlooked. You're not late in the way fear keeps telling you. You are being met in the middle of the very place where you thought you were only enduring. You are being held while the old shape loosens. You are being guided while the root is uncovered. You are being called back to the place where your life is no longer organized around survival alone. You are being strengthened without spectacle. You are being softened without collapse. You are being corrected without rejection. You are being brought near to what is true, and what is true does not need to shout to be real. It stands. It remains. It knows your name. You are waking without having to force the dawn. You are remembering without having to invent the memory. You are returning without having to punish yourself for the time spent away. This is not failure being exposed. This is mercy making a way through what was hidden. Right now, all across the world, there are hearts that have been carrying a hidden weight and calling it normal. Right now, all across the world, there are people who have been growing around old stones and wondering why the shape of their life feels so familiar and so tired. Right now, all across the world, there are those who are hearing this as a quiet summons back to peace, back to truth, back to the place where the soul can breathe again. May you be steadied in what you know. May you be softened in what you have defended for too long. May you be led gently out of the old bend and into the living room of your own becoming. May you be given clarity without fear, peace without performance, and courage without noise. May your roots find water again. May your voice return where it was dimmed. May your heart stop apologizing for needing what was always meant for it. May your steps become lighter as the burden loses its claim. May your inner life agree with the goodness that has been reaching for you. It is sealed. You are not overlooked. You are not late in the way fear keeps telling you. You are being met in the middle of the very place where you thought you were only enduring. You are being held while the old shape loosens. You are being guided while the root is uncovered. You are being called back to the place where your life is no longer organized around survival alone. You are being strengthened without spectacle. You are being softened without collapse. You are being corrected without rejection. You are being brought near to what is true, and what is true does not need to shout to be real. It stands, it remains, it knows your name. You are waking without having to force the dawn. You are remembering without having to invent the memory. You are returning without having to punish yourself for the time spent away. This is not failure being exposed. This is mercy making a way through what was hidden. You are learning that the weight you carried was never the final definition of you. You are learning that the place you bent is not the place you end. You are learning that what has been hidden can be healed, and what has been bent can still rise toward light. You are learning that the old shape is not your permanent form. You are learning that the pressure was real, but so is the release. You are learning that the root can be tended, and when the root is tended, the whole life begins to speak differently. You do not need to force the next season into existence. You do not need to wrestle what is already being rearranged beneath the surface. You do not need to be louder than your own soul. You only need to stay honest enough to recognize what is leaving, what is arriving, and what has already begun to loosen its grip. You are allowed to stop mistaking strain for holiness. You are allowed to stop calling exhaustion devotion. You are allowed to stop treating constant pressure as proof that you matter. You matter because you are held. You matter because you are seen. You matter because the one who named you does not confuse your endurance with your identity. What has been draining you is not simply the amount you carry. It is the way you have been carrying it alone in your inner world, even while surrounded by voices. There is a difference between companionship and true recognition. There is a difference between being around people and being truly met. You have known that difference for a long time. And that difference has shaped your prayers. It has shaped your choices. It has shaped the way you enter rooms and the way you leave them. It has shaped the way you answer quickly when your spirit is tired. It has shaped the way you keep giving when your chest already knows the well is not filling back up. This is why the message reaches so deep. It is not merely telling you to rest. It is telling you that the version of yourself built only to survive is not the version that is meant to govern your future. Something more honest, more spacious, more settled is beginning to stand up in you. You may not have words for everything changing, but you have felt the change. You have felt yourself becoming less able to pretend. You have felt the old tolerances falling away. You have felt your heart refusing to keep calling a delay by a holy name when it is simply a delay. You have felt the dignity of your spirit insisting on truth. That is not rebellion. That is awakening. You are not being asked to become careless. You are being asked to become clear. Clarity will not make you harsh. Clarity will not make you cold. Clarity will make you honest enough to stop watering what cannot feed you back. It will make you gentle with what is real and unmoved by what only performs reality. There is a holy quiet that begins to live in a person when they stop over-explaining their pain to prove it is legitimate. There is a holy quiet that begins when you no longer need every wound to be witnessed in order for it to count. There is a holy quiet that begins when you understand that God was already present in the room where no one else understood you. So let the recognition settle. Let the old striving loosen. Let the inner argument rest for one moment. You are not behind in the way fear narrates. You are in a sacred uncoupling from what no longer carries life. The tree does not ask the storm for permission to remain a tree. It endures because its life is deeper than the weather. And you are being taught the same truth now. The weather is loud, but it is not sovereign. The pressure is real, but it is not final. The root may have learned to bend, but bending is not the same as breaking. The root can be retrained by light. The root can be given water where there was dryness. The root can be drawn out of old avoidance. The root can remember another direction. And when it does, the whole tree begins to change from the inside out, not by performance, but by receiving a different order of life. This is why the return matters. Return is not an abstraction. Return is the moment the root stops circling the stone as if the stone were destiny. Return is the moment the inner life agrees that survival is not the highest possible rhythm. Return is the moment you stop rehearsing old fear as though it were wisdom. And if you have been waiting for a sign that this turning is real, understand this. The sign has already been the discomfort. The sign has already been the inability to settle for what once satisfied you. The sign has already been the way your soul keeps leaning toward truth, even when your habits lean toward familiar pain. You do not have to be ashamed of how long you stayed. You do not have to shame the years you spent learning how to endure. Endurance kept you here. But now, life is inviting you beyond endurance and into alignment. That is a different sound. That is a different pace. That is a different way of being held. And because you are being held, you do not need to rush the tender places. You do not need to yank on new growth to prove it is alive. You do not need to dramatize the shift for it to be genuine. What is real in you is already moving. What is real in you does not require panic to become true. Take another breath. Let that be enough for this moment. You are being invited into a steadiness that does not depend on everyone else understanding your process. You are being invited into a peace that is not fragile. You are being invited into a way of living that does not require you to keep shrinking your own knowing. You are being invited to trust the quiet evidence of your own awakening. And this awakening has consequences. It changes what you tolerate. It changes what you call normal. It changes what you are willing to carry. It changes the speed at which you answer what should have never been confused with love. It changes the tone of your prayer. It changes the way you hear a closed door. It changes the way you stand when the room asks you to betray your own peace. You may have thought the point of this season was to make you stronger. It has, but not in the way you imagined. It has made you more truthful. It has made you more discerning. It has made you less willing to praise what drains you and more willing to kneel before what restores you. That is strength with a different center. And now, even here, the root is learning a new language. It is learning that not every delay is a denial. It is learning that not every loss is abandonment. It is learning that the silence beneath the surface